Okay, I found it. Alright, as you recall, I was talking about my dad's grandparents and how they influenced who he is. And one thing that he said that I thought was important in describing them, he said, now this is referring to his paternal grandparents, who he was pretty close to, even though they didn't live in Key West with he and his family after they moved. They made enough of an impression on him in his early years for him to say this. He says of them that they were original and independent, and that they showed through example that it was not very important what others thought, but more if you could live with yourself. And I really think that that is something that he's lived by, and I really think that that's something that he's passed on to me in turn, for sure. I think that's a really big part of me. When I go through difficulty or struggle with a decision, I really feel a little less burdened by what others might think, and more comfortable with going with what's in my heart without getting too cheesy. I mean, I just think that I'm probably a little less hindered by worrying about other people's opinions than other people might be, and I think that's partly because of what my dad has taught me. And it's been really cool to do this project and discover, you know, how his family members influenced him to be that way, and how it just kind of gets passed on. I guess that's the point of doing an ethnography assignment, to see how these kind of ideas and ideas really get passed down, and how they are reflected throughout the generations. So with that said, I'll get into just kind of a little bit of a life trajectory for my dad. And unfortunately, I can't really get that close with the video, but I'll try to explain what I've done here, and use that to kind of show significant events in his life. Over here we have the state of Texas, which is where he was born, obviously. And then as we progress, I have a picture of Puerto Rico, and I'll bring this a little closer towards the end so you can see. But anyway, this is Puerto Rico, and from here we have the trajectory to Key West, which really can't see that well, but again, I'll show it. Over here, I've chosen 3 hearts. The reason for that is my dad always says he had 3 wives. In actuality, he was only married twice, but he's had 3 significant relationships. That would be with Shelley, who was a very long-term girlfriend. I believe they were together in excess of 10 years. My dad met Shelley when he was very young, in his teens still, and together, when he was about 21, 22, they packed everything that they owned, which was not much, given their hippie lifestyle and traveling lifestyle, packed everything that they owned into a pickup truck and just kind of took off along the coast from Key West. I believe they were in Key West at the time, just looking for a place to live. They didn't really know where they were going, but they just went for it and decided to stop wherever looked appealing. And I don't know, that was something that he told me when I was young, and that story has always resonated with me as well, because I feel like that in a way is part of how I want to live my life. I kind of have a taste for adventure, and I plan to kind of let life take me where it wants. Not to say that I don't have goals, because I definitely do have clearly defined goals, but I don't know. The spirit of adventure there is definitely something that appeals and something that I want to incorporate in my life. The next significant relationship was with my mom. He met my mom actually when she was already pregnant with me in Siesta Key, Florida, which is where they had their house once they were married. But anyway, they were married when I was 6 months old, or thereabouts, and I always believed that he was my dad. They divorced when I was 4, and that was actually when I found out that he wasn't my biological father, but he has obviously remained a part of my life up until now, and he's a very, very important person to me in my life, regardless of whether or not we're biologically linked. Third relationship, third heart, actually it's the one in the middle that's a little bit bigger here, is representative of his wife Christine. They've been married for 20 years and they have 2 children. They're actually coming up on their 20-year anniversary very soon. They have 2 children, Jake and Robert, who are now 15 and 16. Jake is the older one, and I think it's kind of interesting that they're almost as close in age as my dad and his sister Annabelle were, or are, I should say. So anyway, the next thing here, I have a peace sign. My dad, early in life, got swept up in the hippie movement, and I think that's a big part of who he is. Over here, I have a picture of young people gathered at the Lincoln steps of the Lincoln Memorial. This is representative of the May Day protests that my dad participated in, and he was actually detained, I think for 2 days or something, by the authorities. It was a really ugly scene, but he was definitely very much in the movement. He kind of traveled all over and did the drugs and participated in the protests and listened to the music and lived the life. So I think that's pretty important. So that's what's there. Over here I have, you really can't see that, but this is the Monopoly emblem, but it actually says anarchy instead of monopoly. This has a twofold meaning. One is obviously the anti-establishment, counterculture, hippie movement. The other is the fact that my dad did and continues to do pretty well in real estate. He has a certain knack for buying and selling and timing and such, and that's been a big part of how he's made his living in life. It currently sustains his lifestyle. He doesn't ever really stay for very long in one place. He has a house in Flagstaff, Arizona, which is his main residence, and then he has a boat, a sailboat, in San Diego. He loves to sail. I think that's something that feeds his soul. So he likes to get out to the boat as often as possible. He also spends time in Puerto Lobos, Mexico. It's on the Sea of Cortez, and they have a pretty cool, pretty rustic little house there. So between those 3 places and also a house in, it's a kind of a suburb of San Diego, Alpine, California, he and his family spend their time. And his 2 kids, Jake and Rob, they are homeschooled. So you know, they've had a really different sort of coming up in the world, and I'm really interested to see how they turn out as they get older. They're pretty cool kids, and they have had a much different upbringing than your typical American kids, beyond just having such a guy as my dad for their father. They also have the homeschooling and the traveling going for them, so I think they've got a pretty interesting outlook on life where they're going to. Already they're, obviously becoming people of their own, and it's kind of cool to see. So, let's see, what else do I have here? Oh, over here, very important, I have the symbol for AA. My dad, as part of the hippie movement, he did a lot of drugs, and he got pretty heavy into drinking. So by the time I was a young child, he was a pretty severe alcoholic, and that is part of who he is. It's part of who I am. It always will be. And it was part of the reason for his divorce from my mom. And I don't know, it's something that I'm really amazed by and continue to be amazed by the more that I learn about the disease of alcoholism. So few people actually thoroughly remain sober. And my dad has been sober since, I think, 1991, before his marriage to Christine. So after his divorce from my mom, he stopped drinking and stopped smoking cigarettes even, and he's been sober ever since. So I think that goes to show the strength of his character and his grit as an individual. So in closing, I'll just bring this poster a little bit closer so you can see it. So we have QS there, obviously, and there's the photograph in the middle. I think that's a really cool picture. Here's our Monopoly Anarchy symbol, our peace sign, and over on the other side, Texas and Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico, where are you? Okay, there we go. So, finally, I just want to say that this has been a really interesting project. It's something that I've really enjoyed, and I think probably it's brought my dad and I a little bit closer because I was able to learn things about him, and especially about his family, his ancestors that we've never talked about. I got to learn a lot more about him than I ever knew. There were certain stories that I had heard before, but there was a lot of information that I got that was pretty illuminating to me. So it was a good project, and I hope you enjoy reading my paper. It has a lot more details, and I'm glad to have done it. So thank you. Bye.